Dr. Maya Chaudhry's breath formed small clouds in the frigid air of the excavation site. 50 meters beneath Antarctica's Ross ice shelf, her team had uncovered something impossible, a perfectly preserved structure of non-terrestrial origin. "How old is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Kowalski checked his readings again. Carbon dating puts the surrounding ice at approximately 65 million years, right at the KT boundary. Maya ran her gloved hand along the smooth metallic surface. No seams, no rivets, no sign of how it had been assembled. The material felt warm despite the sub-zero temperatures, as if it contained some internal power source that had remained active for millions of years. "Let's proceed with the entry protocol," she said. The initial breach into the structure 3 days earlier had revealed an expansive interior filled with technology beyond human understanding. The team had documented everything meticulously before attempting to decipher any of it. Now they focused on what appeared to be a central database. Inside the main chamber, xenolinguist Dr. Eli Berkman worked tirelessly with quantum computers to decode the alien language. Progress had been slow until they discovered a mathematical sequence that served as a Rosetta Stone of sorts. "Maya, you need to see this," Eli called out, his face illuminated by holographic symbols projected from the alien console. She hurried over, careful not to disturb any of the equipment. "What is it?" "I've managed to access their records." They called themselves the Vex. This wasn't just an outpost, it was a laboratory. The holographic display shifted, showing Earth as it existed during the late Cretaceous period. Lush forests, vast oceans, and thriving dinosaur populations. Then came simulations of carefully calculated orbital adjustments, redirecting an asteroid toward Earth with surgical precision. "They did it deliberately," Maya whispered, the implications washing over her. "The dinosaur extinction wasn't a random cosmic accident." Eli nodded grimly. Earth was their testing ground for planetary engineering. They wanted to see if they could reset a planet's biosphere without destroying it completely. More data flowed across the display. Post-impact projections, atmospheric changes, species loss calculations. The Vex had documented everything with clinical detachment. "Wait, what's this?" Maya pointed to a recurring symbol that appeared throughout the data. Eli focused the translation algorithm on it. "It's some kind of accounting term." They categorized the experiment as a debt. A debt to whom? To whatever might evolve from what they left behind. Eli's voice grew quiet. They knew intelligent life might eventually emerge from the survivors of their experiment. They logged it as a deferred compensation obligation in their records. Essentially an IOU to be repaid if any sentient species arose from the aftermath. Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Antarctic cold. They never expected to pay it. They abandoned Earth. But they didn't abandon their record-keeping. Eli brought up another section of data. This outpost was designed to maintain its records indefinitely and to send a signal when certain technological thresholds were detected. Our recent quantum communication experiments must have triggered it. Admiral Chen, the military liaison to the scientific expedition, had been listening silently. Now he stepped forward. "Are you saying we just accidentally RSVP'd to a 65-million-year-old debt collection notice?" "Not exactly," Maya said, studying the complex ledger displayed before them. "We didn't acknowledge the debt. We just informed the creditor that the debtor's collateral, Earth, has new management." Eli's translation algorithm continued processing the final entries in the Vex database. A cold certainty settled in Maya's stomach as the words appeared. Extinction debt registered. Payment due upon claim by emergent intelligence. Projected collection date, indeterminate. The last line blinked ominously in the holographic display. Status: active. 3 years after the Antarctic discovery, humanity had accelerated its expansion into the solar system. The Martian colony had grown to 50,000 people. Mining operations on the asteroid belt provided resources that had once seemed impossibly scarce. Quantum communication networks linked Earth's disparate settlements into a single, thriving civilization. Dr. Maya Chaudhry now headed the VEX Research Institute, a global organization dedicated to understanding the alien technology recovered from Antarctica. Their progress had been remarkable, if humbling. Humanity had advanced decades in just a few years, yet they'd barely scratched the surface of VEX capabilities. She was reviewing new translation data when her assistant burst into her office. "Dr. Chaudhry, you need to see this immediately." The wall screen displayed a live feed from the Long-Range Detection Array in lunar orbit. An object had appeared at the edge of the solar system, decelerating rapidly from what must have been faster than light travel. "How big is it?" Maya asked, already knowing this was no natural phenomenon. "Initial readings suggest it's approximately 300 kilometers in diameter." Maya felt her mouth go dry. "Get me Admiral Chen. Now." Within hours, the Planetary Defense Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from Earth and all colonial settlements gathered virtually as scientists presented what little they knew. "The object has established orbit at the heliopause," reported Dr. Yumi Tanaka, Chief of Astronomical Surveillance. "It's maintaining position exactly 122 astronomical units from the Sun." Admiral Chen leaned forward. "Is it a ship?" "We believe so," Yumi replied. "Its composition matches materials found in the Antarctic facility. We're detecting energy signatures consistent with VEX technology." The chamber fell silent. Everyone present understood the implications. "They've come to collect," Maya said quietly. Confirmation arrived 18 hours later. A smaller vessel detached from the massive ship and began approaching Earth at impossible speed. Despite this, it somehow produced no heat signature, no radiation, no detectable propulsion mechanism. World leaders prepared for first contact. A reception area was hastily established in neutral territory, the International Scientific Base in New Zealand's Canterbury Plains. Military forces were strategically positioned worldwide, though everyone understood the futility of resistance if the VEX proved hostile. The alien vessel descended from the clouds with eerie precision, a sleek obsidian construct that absorbed rather than reflected light. It hovered silently before settling on the designated landing zone. Maya stood among the reception committee, heart pounding as a seam appeared in the craft's seamless hull. A ramp extended, and from the darkness emerged a being unlike anything humanity had anticipated. The VEX ambassador, introducing itself as Orcs, resembled a collection of geometric shapes constantly rearranging themselves within a vaguely humanoid outline. Its voice manifested directly in their minds, bypassing language barriers. "We acknowledge your achievement of minimum sapient threshold," the being communicated. "Your species has utilized remnant contextual data from our previous planetary modification project to accelerate your development. This is expected behavior." President Okafor stepped forward. "We welcome you to Earth and look forward to peaceful exchange between our civilizations." The geometric patterns comprising Orcs shifted, conveying what might have been amusement. Exchange implies mutually beneficial transaction between equals. "Our analysis indicates your civilization occupies development category 7 of 23. The VEX collective spans 3,400 worlds across 17 galaxies. Equality is not applicable." Maya felt a chill as the being turned toward her. "You have accessed our research facility. You understand why we have returned." She nodded. "The extinction debt." "Correct. According to VEX collective law, payment is now due." President Okafor maintained her composure. "What exactly does this payment entail?" The geometric shapes within Orcs aligned into perfect symmetry. "This world, its resources, its biosphere, all assets derived from our original planetary engineering project." "That's not acceptable," Admiral Chen stated flatly. "Your acceptance is irrelevant." Orcs responded. "However, we recognize the principle of transition accommodation. You have 5 standard years to evacuate all population and portable assets. This is generous by collective standards. Most species receive 5 days. The ambassador returned to its vessel without waiting for a response. As the ship rose silently into the sky, humanity faced an impossible truth. The universe had owners, and Earth's rent was overdue. Humanity's response to the Vex ultimatum was not what anyone expected. There was no global panic, no mass hysteria. Instead, a grim determination settled over Earth's population. If they had 5 years, they would use every second. Dr. Maya Chaudhry returned to Antarctica with an expanded team. While governments worldwide began drafting evacuation plans, she remained convinced there was more to discover in the ancient outpost. The deeper levels were sealed, she explained to her new colleague, Dr. Eli Bergman, a quantum physicist whose work on multidimensional mathematics had proven crucial to understanding Vex technology. We focused on the main chambers during initial exploration, but there's evidence of extensive facilities beneath what we've accessed. 3 months of careful excavation revealed their persistence was warranted. Beneath the primary research station lay a vast archive, the complete records of the Vex experiment on Earth. "This is incredible," Eli murmured as they processed the data. They documented everything: geological changes, atmospheric composition, evolutionary projections. Maya nodded, her eyes never leaving the holographic displays. "But look at this section. The experiment wasn't just a failure. It was catastrophically negligent by their own standards. The records showed the Vex had miscalculated the asteroid's impact effects. The extinction event had been more severe than intended, nearly sterilizing the planet completely. More damning, they had recognized the possibility of intelligent life evolving from the survivors, but had assigned it such a low probability that they considered it irrelevant. They knew," Maya whispered. "They knew it was possible we would exist someday, and they just wrote us off." Their most significant discovery came a week later. Hidden in technical appendices was evidence that the Vex had implemented biological and geological processes first tested on Earth across their empire. The very foundations of their multi-galactic civilization relied on principles derived from their Earth experiment. Maya immediately contacted Amara Washington, formerly Earth's most renowned prosecutor and now head of the newly formed Interspecies Legal Division. They used Earth as a testing ground for technologies they later patented and implemented throughout their empire, Maya explained, transmitting the evidence. By their own records, processes evolved on Earth became the blueprint for Vex expansion. Amara's eyes widened as she reviewed the data. "This changes everything. They're not just debt collectors. They're intellectual property thieves." Within days, Amara assembled a team of Earth's sharpest legal minds, scientists, and diplomats. Their task: craft a counterclaim against the Vex collective. "We need to understand their legal system," she instructed. "Every civilization has rules, even one as advanced as theirs. Find them, learn them, and identify our leverage." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Sanjay Patel, a historian specializing in ancient trade networks, identified patterns in Vex legal records that paralleled Earth's oldest commercial codes. "They function on a principle similar to our concept of balanced reciprocity," he explained. "A debt must be acknowledged, but so must prior investments. If we can prove Earth's biosphere constituted an unwilling investment in Vex prosperity," Amara completed his thought, "then we have a valid counterclaim." 6 months after the Vex ultimatum, humanity sent its response. Not a plea for mercy, but a formal legal notice delivered via quantum communication to the Vex vessel still orbiting the solar system. The document, titled Counter Petition for Compensation and Recognition of Prior Investment, detailed how Earth's biological and geological systems had been appropriated without consent or compensation. It demanded recognition of humanity as unwilling investors in Vex expansion and requested appropriate remuneration. The response came 3 days later, a single line: "Counterclaim requires adjudication. Prepare representatives for transport to the Court of Cosmic Arbitration." Admiral Chen looked skeptical when Amara shared the news. "They're actually going to let us challenge them." "They have to," Amara replied, a fierce smile crossing her face. "We just leverage the one thing more important to them than Earth itself." "What's that?" "Their own rules. Even empires need systems to function, Admiral. We just found their operating manual." The human delegation emerged from the Vex transport vessel into a structure that defied comprehension. The Court of Cosmic Arbitration existed in what appeared to be a fold in spacetime, a neutral ground established by the oldest spacefaring civilizations. The vast chamber seemed to stretch infinitely in all directions, yet somehow remained intimately accessible. Amara Washington led the team of 12 scientists, historians, legal experts, and cultural specialists, chosen to represent humanity's interests. Dr. Maya Chaudhry and Dr. Eli Bergman followed close behind, carrying data crystals containing Earth's complete evolutionary and geological record. "Remember," Amara whispered, "show no fear. They expect us to be intimidated." The Vex delegation materialized across the chamber. Unlike Orcs, these representatives had adopted more defined forms, crystalline structures arranged in humanoid configurations. Accompanying them were entities from other species, observers or perhaps allies, whose physiologies ranged from vaguely insectoid to entirely energy-based. Between the two parties hovered three beings of pure light, their forms shifting between different geometric patterns. The Arbiters. "The proceedings will commence," announced a voice that seemed to bypass their ears and appear directly in their minds. "The Vex Collective presents claim of extinction debt against the species designated human. Humans present counterclaim of uncompensated appropriation of biological and geological intellectual property. Both claims will be evaluated according to the universal principles of equitable exchange." The senior Vex representative stepped forward. "Our claim is simple and incontrovertible. The species now calling itself human exists because of Vex intervention 65 million years prior. Their entire evolutionary line survived only because of our planetary engineering project. Their world exists in its current form because of our actions. By universal calculation standards, they owe their existence to us, and payment is now due." The being projected a series of complex equations, the mathematical proof of their claim according to some cosmic accounting system. When it was humanity's turn, Amara approached with measured confidence. "We do not dispute that the Vex action, 65 million years ago, shaped Earth's evolutionary trajectory. However, we reject the characterization of this relationship as merely debtors and creditors." She nodded to Maya, who activated their presentation. The chamber filled with a holographic timeline of Earth's evolutionary history, from the first single-celled organisms to the present day. The Vex experiment on Earth was not merely a planetary engineering test. It was the foundation of what would become their entire imperial expansion methodology. Maya highlighted specific biological processes, everything from photosynthesis patterns to mammalian stress responses, and displayed their direct correlation to technologies now fundamental to Vex civilization. By the Vex's own records, which we recovered from their abandoned research station, they derived their terraforming protocols, atmospheric manipulation techniques, and even their bioengineering paradigms from studying Earth's response to their intervention. Eli stepped forward, presenting complex mathematical models. These equations demonstrate that the compounded value of Earth's biological and geological intellectual property, when factoring in 65 million years of application across thousands of worlds, exceeds the value of the original Vex intervention by a factor of approximately 8,000 to 1. The chamber fell silent. Even the Vex representatives seemed momentarily immobile, their crystalline structures ceasing their constant subtle movements. Finally, one of the arbiters spoke. "This representation of value derivation requires verification. The court will examine all evidence from both parties." What followed was unlike any legal proceeding in human history. For what felt like days, though time seemed fluid in this place, both sides presented evidence, mathematical proofs, and historical records. The humans, far from being overwhelmed, demonstrated remarkable adaptability, quickly learning the formal structures of cosmic arbitration and adjusting their arguments accordingly. When the Vex attempted to dismiss human scientific understanding as primitive, Maya countered by solving a complex multidimensional equation on the spot, using principles derived from studying Vex technology. When they questioned humanity's standing to even bring a claim, Amara cited precedents from 12 different galactic legal traditions, including the Vex's own founding principles. The observers from other species grew increasingly attentive. What had begun as a curiosity, primitives challenging one of the galaxy's oldest powers, had become something unprecedented, a genuine contest. The senior arbiter finally interrupted the proceedings. The preliminary assessment indicates both claims have merit under universal principles. This case will proceed to valuation phase. Both parties will prepare comprehensive calculations of resource value, intellectual property application, and evolutionary contribution. As the human delegation regrouped, Admiral Chen, who had observed silently until now, whispered to Amara, "Did we just win?" She shook her head slightly. "Not yet, but they expected us to beg. Instead, we're making them calculate." As the valuation phase of the arbitration began, the Vex changed tactics. Their representatives arranged a demonstration of their technological capabilities, presumably to remind the humans, and the court, of the vast power differential between the species. In the center of the chamber, they'd manifested a perfect simulation of Earth's solar system, then casually altered the orbit of Mars, stabilized Venus's atmosphere, and transformed Jupiter's great red spot into an organized energy collection system. The message was clear: we reshape worlds as easily as humans build sandcastles. An impressive display, Amara Washington acknowledged when the demonstration concluded. But irrelevant to these proceedings, the senior Vex representative's crystalline form glinted. It establishes context for valuation. Your species possesses negligible technological advancement compared to ours. This impacts the relative value of your contribution. Dr. Maya Chaudhry stepped forward. With respect to the court, we would like to offer a different perspective on value. The arbiters granted permission, and Maya activated their own presentation. Unlike the Vex's grandiose display, she began with a single cell. This is the common ancestor of all complex life on Earth after the extinction event caused by the Vex. From this humble beginning came all the biodiversity of our world. The display expanded, showing the explosive diversification of life forms across millions of years. The Vex experiment created something unprecedented, an evolutionary pressure cooker. By nearly wiping out all complex life, they inadvertently created the conditions for radical adaptation. Maya highlighted the surprising evolutionary paths that emerged after the dinosaur extinction, the rapid diversification of mammals, the development of complex social structures, the emergence of unprecedented cognitive adaptability. Our species evolved under conditions of extreme selective pressure. Unlike most intelligent species, who evolved in stable environments with gradual changes, humans are the product of catastrophe. We are crisis-adapted. Dr. Eli Bergman continued the presentation, shifting to comparative cognitive studies conducted on the various species present in the court. Most advanced civilizations develop through specialization and efficiency. Their cognitive processes become optimized for specific problems. The Vex, for instance, excel at complex multidimensional calculations, but demonstrate rigid thinking patterns when faced with paradigm shifts. Murmurs rippled through the observing delegates. The Vex representatives remained motionless, but their crystalline structures emitted subtle frequencies that suggested discomfort. Humans, by contrast, evolved to be cognitive generalists, Eli continued. Our neural structures prioritize flexibility over efficiency. We make connections between seemingly unrelated concepts. We thrive on collaborative problem-solving across different knowledge domains. Admiral Chen stepped forward, addressing the court directly. This adaptive capacity isn't merely theoretical. In the 3 years since discovering VEX technology, we've not only comprehended its principles but improved upon several applications, despite having less than 1/10,000th of their civilization's experience. To demonstrate, Chen activated a small device, a field of energy expanded around the human delegation, a modified version of VEX shielding technology that the humans had reconfigured to operate more efficiently. Our engineers identified a fundamental inefficiency in the original VEX design, Chen explained. By recalibrating the quantum field harmonics, we reduced energy consumption by 37% while increasing field stability. The senior orator's luminous form brightened. Verification confirms the human modification indeed represents an improvement on the original design. This is unexpected. Maya returned to the center of the chamber. The VEX value efficiency above all, yet they fail to recognize the efficiency of evolutionary adaptation. They see technology as their advantage. We propose that our cognitive adaptability, the direct result of their extinction experiment, represents a unique evolutionary asset of immeasurable value. She gestured to their collected evidence. The VEX did not merely trigger an extinction event. They inadvertently created the conditions for the emergence of a fundamentally different kind of intelligence, one capable of making creative leaps that their more structured thinking cannot. The arbiters conferred silently. Finally, the central figure addressed both delegations. The court acknowledges this perspective has merit. Cognitive adaptability will be factored into the valuation model. Additionally, the demonstrated human capacity to improve VEX technology constitutes evidence of intellectual contribution beyond what was initially presented. As the human delegation returned to their preparation area, they found themselves surrounded by representatives from other species, all suddenly eager to establish communication protocols. What had begun as a debt collection had transformed into a coming-out party for humanity on the galactic stage. What just happened? Chen asked quietly. Amara smiled. We just became interesting. The valuation phase entered its third cycle, a unit of time in the court that approximated an Earth week. Both sides had presented extensive calculations regarding their claims. The chamber now bristled with holographic equations, evolutionary timelines, and resource inventories that stretched the cognitive limits of even the most advanced minds present. The VEX had methodically outlined Earth's physical worth, its mineral deposits, atmospheric composition, biodiversity, and orbital position. Their calculation, performed with cold precision, assigned Earth a value equivalent to approximately 0.37% of their empire's total assets. A negligible sum for us, their representative concluded, but the entirety of human existence for them. The equitable solution is clear. Amara Washington conferred quietly with her team before approaching the center of the chamber. Beside her stood Dr. Raj Patel, Earth's leading economist, who had spent months developing a revolutionary valuation model specifically for this moment. Esteemed arbiters, we accept the VEX calculation of Earth's physical resources. Amara began, causing murmurs among the observers. Their mathematical assessment of our planet's raw materials and energy potential is accurate. The VEX representatives shifted slightly, their crystalline forms catching the ambient light, perhaps the equivalent of a satisfied nod. However, she continued, their valuation fundamentally misunderstands what constitutes value in our counterclaim. Dr. Patil activated their presentation. Unlike the VEX's static inventory, the human display showed dynamic, evolving systems, ecological networks, genetic algorithms, cultural transmission patterns, and cognitive adaptation models. What the VEX have utilized from Earth is not merely its physical properties but its evolutionary algorithms, Patil explained. The mathematical patterns that govern how life adapts, how ecosystems maintain equilibrium, how information propagates through complex systems. The display zoomed in on specific examples. The pattern recognition principles derived from mammalian visual cortices, the distributed decision-making protocols modeled on insect colonies, the parallel processing mechanics inspired by forest mycelium networks. These algorithms form the foundation of Vex terraforming technology, their biosphere management systems, even their distributed intelligence architectures, Patel continued. And unlike physical resources, algorithms are infinitely replicable without diminishment. He inputted a sequence of equations that expanded across the chamber. When we calculate the value of these algorithms' application across the Vex Empire over 65 million years, factoring in their implementation on approximately 3,000 worlds, the compound value exceeds Earth's physical worth by a factor of. The number materialized at the center of the display, so large it required specialized notation even in the court's advanced mathematical language. 8,472 to 1, Patel concluded. The chamber fell silent. Even the arbiters seemed momentarily stunned. The senior Vex representative's form flickered, a sign of agitation. This calculation is based on speculative attribution. You cannot prove direct causality between Earth's evolutionary patterns and our technological implementations. Maya Chaudhry stepped forward. But we can. She accessed the recovered Vex database from the Antarctic outpost, displaying research logs that explicitly referenced Earth-based biological systems as templates for technologies later patented and implemented throughout their empire. Your own researchers documented their derivation of key technologies from Earth's evolutionary responses to your experiment, she said. They tracked the implementation of these principles across your expansion timeline. She highlighted specific entries where Vex scientists had marveled at unexpected adaptations in Earth's recovering biosphere, flagging them for wider application. By your own records, Earth wasn't merely a test site. It was the primary source of your most valuable intellectual property. The arbiters conferred, their luminous forms pulsing with complex patterns. When they addressed the chamber again, their collective voice resonated with a new tone. The court has reviewed both valuation models. The human calculation methodology introduces a paradigm previously unconsidered in extinction debt cases. Intellectual property derivation across multiple implementation domains requires comprehensive assessment. The senior arbiter turned toward the Vex delegation. The compounded value of algorithmic implementation across the Vex empire substantively alters the balance of obligation. Preliminary calculations indicate that if validated, the human counterclaim would exceed the original extinction debt by orders of magnitude. The Vex representatives conferred through some silent communication method. Finally, their leader addressed the court. We request direct negotiation with the human representatives. The complexity of this case exceeds standard adjudication parameters. The arbiters granted this request, and as the court session adjourned, Amara gathered her team. They want to settle, she said quietly. They've realized that if the court rules in our favor, the precedent could affect their relationships with every world they've ever terraformed. Admiral Chen looked skeptical. Can we trust any negotiation with them? Maya studied the departing Vex delegation. They're not evil, Admiral. They're pragmatic. For the first time, they're calculating that working with us might be more valuable than simply taking Earth. Amara nodded. And that's all the leverage we need. The negotiation chamber existed in a pocket dimension adjacent to the court, a neutral space where both delegations could meet without the formalities of arbitration. The room adapted to accommodate the physiological needs of all present, providing perfect comfort for both humans and Vex. Commander Elena Santos had been summoned from Earth to lead the negotiation team. As humanity's foremost diplomat and game theorist, she brought a perspective the scientific and legal teams lacked. While the others understood the Vex's technology and legal structures, Santos understood power dynamics. The Vex delegation had reconfigured itself. Gone were the intimidating crystalline structures. Instead, they appeared as luminous humanoid figures, still alien, but approachable. Their leader introduced itself as Nexar, a high administrator in the Vex collective. We acknowledge the unexpected complexity of this situation. Nexar began, its voice modulated to sound almost warm. The court's preliminary assessment suggests protracted litigation would benefit neither of our interests. Santos nodded. We agree. Endless legal proceedings serve no one. Then let us be direct. What does humanity want? The question hung in the air. This was the moment they had prepared for, the opportunity to name their price. According to the court's preliminary calculations, the Vex potentially owed humanity resources equivalent to thousands of worlds. Maya Chaudhry and Amara Washington exchanged glances. They had discussed this extensively, gaming out scenarios, weighing options. The entire negotiating team knew what was at stake, not just Earth's future, but humanity's place in the cosmos. Commander Santos leaned forward. We don't want your worlds. The Vex representatives remained still, but a subtle change in their luminosity suggested surprise. We want 3 things, Santos continued. First, knowledge. Complete access to Vex star maps, technology for sustainable expansion, and scientific data on all known habitable worlds outside your direct sphere of influence. Nexer's form flickered slightly. You request significant intellectual assets. Assets derived largely from studying Earth's systems, Maya interjected. We're asking for access to the refined applications of our own evolutionary algorithms. Santos continued. Second, we want recognition. Formal acknowledgement of humanity as equals with full standing in the galactic community, including all rights of expansion, colonization, and representation in interspecies forums. Unprecedented for a species at your development stage, one of the other Vex representatives noted. Third, Santos said, we want partnership. A formal alliance between humanity and the Vex Collective for mutual scientific, cultural, and defensive collaboration. The chamber fell silent. The Vex representatives conferred through some silent communication channel, their luminous forms pulsing with subtle patterns. Nexer finally responded. Your requests are unexpected. Most species in your position would demand territorial concessions, resource allocations, or technology transfers. We're not most species, Admiral Chen stated flatly. Santos elaborated. Physical resources are finite. Territorial expansion inevitably leads to conflict, but knowledge, recognition, and partnership create infinite possibilities for mutual benefit. An unusual perspective, Nexer acknowledged. However, we must consider the precedent this would establish. Other developing species might demand similar consideration. Good, Santos replied without hesitation. Perhaps that's exactly the precedent the galaxy needs, cooperation over exploitation. Amara Washington added, your civilization has existed for millions of years by prioritizing efficiency. We're offering you something more valuable than planets, a new paradigm for interaction that eliminates the inefficiency of perpetual conflict. The Vex representatives withdrew to the far side of the chamber for private consultation. Their luminous forms merged temporarily into a single pulsating entity, their version of a committee meeting. When they separated, Nexer approached the human delegation. We find your proposal conceptually viable, with one condition. Humanity must demonstrate that it won't repeat our mistake. What mistake? Maya asked. Careless expansion. Nexer replied. Our extinction debt to your world was real. We acknowledge this. We altered Earth's evolutionary trajectory without fully considering the consequences. Before we accept humans as equals in the galactic community, we require assurance that you will expand more responsibly than we did. Santos didn't hesitate. We accept that condition. In fact, we insist on it. Humanity has learned from our own planetary mistakes. We have no desire to replicate them on a galactic scale. Then we have the framework for agreement, Nexer concluded. Knowledge, recognition, and partnership in exchange for demonstrated responsible expansion. As the two delegations began drafting the formal terms, Admiral Chen whispered to Santos, you didn't ask for protection from other species who might threaten Earth. Santos smiled slightly. We don't need their protection. We need their knowledge. With that, we'll protect ourselves, and perhaps someday them. Maya overheard and added softly, besides, the best protection isn't a shield. It's becoming too valuable to attack. 5 years after the confrontation with the Vex, Earth had transformed beyond recognition. The deadline that had once loomed as a death sentence had instead become the catalyst for unprecedented growth. Dr. Maya Chaudhry stood at the observation deck of the Antarctic Research Complex, no longer a hidden outpost, but a sprawling center of interspecies scientific collaboration. The facility had been built around the original Vex structure, now a museum and educational center that attracted visitors from across the galaxy. The Polaris delegation has arrived, her assistant informed her. They're particularly interested in the evolutionary adaptation exhibits. Maya nodded. Make sure Dr. Bergman is available to answer their questions. The Polaris have a unique perspective on cognitive development that we could learn from. Access to Vex knowledge had accelerated human development in ways no one could have predicted. With star maps of the galaxy's habitable systems, humanity had established colonies on 12 worlds, each carefully selected not just for habitability, but for minimal impact on existing ecosystems. Vex technology, improved by human innovation, had allowed them to transform previously uninhabitable environments without disrupting natural processes. The Mars colony now housed 3 million people beneath vast transparent domes, where engineered forests produced oxygen and food while preserving the planet's original landscape. But the most profound changes weren't technological. Earth had become a nexus of galactic culture and commerce. Ships from 24 civilizations regularly visited the solar system, exchanging knowledge, art, and resources. The United Nations had evolved into the Terran Council, which now represented humanity's interests across the stars. Maya's communicator chimed. Admiral Chen, now Ambassador Chen, appeared on the screen. Maya, the ceremony is about to begin. Are you joining us? On my way, she replied, heading toward the transit pod that would take her to New Geneva, where the Galactic Restoration Initiative would be formally launched. The journey took just under 15 minutes, halfway around the world in less time than her morning commute had taken in the old days. As the pod docked at the United Species Complex, Maya was greeted by a diverse group of humans and aliens, all gathered for the historic occasion. Amara Washington, now serving as Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, met her at the entrance. The Vex delegation just arrived. Nexer specifically asked if you would be attending. Inside the Grand Assembly Hall, representatives from 27 spacefaring civilizations had gathered. At the center of the chamber stood a holographic display of a planet, Kepler 400 and 38 bits, once a thriving world that had been stripped of resources by an aggressive empire centuries ago. Commander Elena Santos stepped onto the platform, now serving as the director of the initiative. Today marks the beginning of a new approach to our shared cosmos. The Galactic Restoration Initiative will not merely preserve existing worlds, but restore those damaged by past exploitation. She gestured to the Vex delegation. With the combined knowledge of the Vex Collective and the adaptive innovation of humanity, we have developed techniques to regenerate dead worlds, to rekindle extinguished biospheres, and to heal the scars of thoughtless expansion. Nexer, the Vex representative, joined her on the platform. Its luminous form had grown familiar to humans over the years of collaboration. The Vex Collective once viewed the universe as a resource to be efficiently utilized, it stated. Through our interaction with humanity, we have come to recognize a more sustainable efficiency, the cultivation of diversity rather than its replacement. The assembly applauded as Santos and Nexer activated the ceremonial launcher together. On the holographic display, the barren surface of Kepler 400 and 38 bits began to change as the first restoration drones entered its atmosphere, beginning the decades-long process of revival. As the ceremony concluded, Maya found herself standing next to Nexer in the reception area. 5 years ago, we came to collect a debt, the Vex observed. We did not anticipate becoming debtors ourselves. Maya smiled. I don't think of it as debt anymore. The old ledger was about what was taken. The new one is about what we create together. An interesting accounting methodology, Nexer replied. its luminosity suggesting what might have been amusement, one that even our most advanced systems didn't calculate. Later, as Maya walked through the halls of the complex, she passed the Museum of Extinction and Renewal. At its entrance stood a simple display, the original Vex debt record from Antarctica, preserved in a crystal case. Beside it, a new document was displayed, the founding charter of the Restoration Initiative. A group of children, human and alien, gathered around a guide who explained the exhibit. The Vex came to collect a debt they believed humanity owed them, the guide explained. Instead, they discovered that the true value of Earth wasn't in its resources, but in its perspective, the unique viewpoint of a species that had survived catastrophe and learned from it. One of the alien children raised an appendage in question. Is that why the new ledger says paid forward instead of paid in full? The guide nodded. Exactly. Because the lesson of the extinction debt wasn't about settling old accounts. It was about ensuring that life throughout the galaxy has a future worth more than its past. Maya continued walking, a sense of profound satisfaction settling over her. The debt that had nearly ended humanity had instead transformed it, and in doing so, had begun to transform the galaxy itself. Not through conquest or technological superiority, but through the uniquely human gift of turning catastrophe into opportunity, of finding hope in the aftermath of extinction, and of insisting that even the oldest powers in the cosmos could learn something new, that the universe's greatest resource wasn't its matter or energy, but the infinite possibility of what diverse minds could create together.